At this webinar today. The topic of today is driving successful adoption at asset integrity software. So for today, how we have structured it is to have that end state in mind. So really user adoption, but eventually it goes towards a successful project, and user adoption is a key element in that. So with me, I have a very respected business professional, Ronald de Kok, and also a dear friend of MaxGrip. But before we get started, my name is Marnix de Kloe. I'm an account director at Cenosco. We're an asset integrity software provider, and we're going to talk about user adoption. How we have structured it is we're going to talk about different phases that we see within the project life cycle. So starting from the initial phase, going to evaluation, but really going to user adoption at that point as well. Also, what I would like to encourage is everybody that is joining, please feel free to use the chat box to post their questions, and we're happy to address that after the session. So with that, let's get started. Welcome, Ronald. Welcome to the webinar. Could you talk a little bit about your background, experience, etc.?
I will. And again, thanks for inviting me, having me over. You can see my name and job title on the screen. In short, I've been working for almost 20 years on the side of inspection bodies, looking after how clients demonstrate, manage compliance. So a lot of history on that side. And now for the last 10 years, I'm working at MaxGrip. Key focus, which you see on my job title, is also on what we call product development, in the sense of service development, what's happening in the industry, what trends, how do we tap into that. But the most important reason for being here is that our company, MaxGrip, wants to help clients improve plant performance. Mm-hmm. We talk about performance, so working with the end state in mind. Yeah. How can we improve the performance? How can we help them along their journey? How can we help them, what we sometimes call, not so much in getting the software to work, solution to work, but actually getting the organization to work with it and continue to work with it. So I'm happy to share our experience, our views, do's and don'ts in this webinar. And obviously, on a number of occasions, we already work together with Cenosco on several client cases, either on-prem in the early phase, but also in after what you might call the implementation phase. Yeah. We can also discuss how we help to drive improved performance. So that's again, good. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I know that the audience will be very happy and very interested to hear about those practical examples and challenges, but really as a key takeaway what they can do to improve the user adoption. So. To start from the beginning, something which we call the initial need or vision. So from your consulting point of view, how do you make sure the business case goes beyond compliance and really link to performance improvement with an end state, let's say, in mind? How do you do that? How do you approach that?
That's an interesting question. Like I said, when I worked at the inspection body, there was really a focus on managing compliance, demonstrating compliance. And there was also at that time what the software should do, no more than that. Having moved beyond, if you want to call it like that, and also one of the reasons why we're here is actually to say what comes beyond compliance. So the business case, as we call it, is not to achieve compliance. The business case is what do you do after that. Mm-hmm. So achieving compliance, of course, is essential. It's not coming easy. It takes effort and work, but there's more opportunities after that, if you want to call it like that. There's room for wider improvements. And back to the business case, we really look at business KPIs.
Right.
Compliance, I put it a bit blunt, is a check in the box. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of work, but that's a check. But how does it improve business performance? How can actually your solution inside it help clients to improve performance? What can they do less? What can they do more? What should they do more? Or where actually is the room for improvement. Mm-hmm. And the business case where we help with is how to translate that to their KPIs. So when the software is working, where should you see the improvement? You saw the gauge on the screen. Where will it move?
Right.
How can it move? What can you do actually to help improve business without any concession, obviously, on safety and compliance? So that's our background, mm-hmm. Planning performance. But actually, that is interesting for you, because you see a lot of clients ask for these kind of solutions, and we'll come back to compliance a bit later. But they're also sometimes what we see not really fully prepared. And so it's kind of like, yes, maybe I want this software, or I want the software, but not sure if they have all the ducks in a row. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious how you, as a software company solution provider, at an early stage can already see these kind of telltales, what they are, and also for the audience, of course, learn what to avoid in making sure that the whole trajectory will be successful right from the start?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. And so for us, when we engage, clients in that very first age, one of the things that we keep in mind is with which departments we are converging with. Which departments are we having those conversations? Obviously, the business, in asset integrity, of course, the business should be there because eventually they're the main beneficiary of the solution or the technology or the real project, if you will. But it also needs to have the supporting buy-in of management. Are we engaging with management? What are their, let's say, key elements? You talked about the business case. That is something that we are also very sensitive to talk to those departments as well. And last but not least, if also at that early stage, IT is involved, then we know it has the right attention, and that will be, an early, sign. This is again having the right attention, and eventually we'll also have the best, let's say, user adoption as we go along. So that's one thing. So to which departments are we, communicating? One other thing which we also keep in mind is what we call customer maturity. So how experienced is the client with doing business projects? Something that you probably are going to talk about as well is change management, being part of, let's say, such a business project. How mature are they to do those kind of business projects, IT projects? Are they self-supporting? Do they have their own, let's say, the dedicated IT teams, etc.? So that is a second key element, which is for us already, let's say, a good sign that it will have a successful project as we go along. And last but not least, asset integrity is driven by data, as you are well aware, right? You're talking about inspection, you're talking about reliability. There's much more. So how data clean and how data ready is the company for such a project? If it's scattered all over the place, we know there's a significant need, let's say, effort required to bring it to a success, which is possible. But if they have everything, let's say, organized, nicely labeled, data models, etc., and we'll talk about some other stuff as well, that already is a good sign that the project is going fluently. And of course, that it will also have a very good, strong user adoption once the project is implemented. So those are I would say, the three key elements when it comes to, let's say, the early signs at that stage. Yeah.
It sounds very recognizable. I mentioned the business case as the KPIs, but one thing we also look at indeed is the condition of success of the organization to come towards the adoption. And sometimes we're asked for help on that respect as well. Before we go into that, and data quality is another topic I'd like to hear more about later on. We know from the past. But I can imagine with your background, integrity management, which you're doing already for a long time, that quite often it's, I would call it, perception or expectations that you bring a compliance software solution, and that's where it stops, where it ends.
Right.
How do you deal with it?
Yeah. So for us, we're very, very tightly connected to compliance. Yeah, that's indeed what you mentioned. So that's kind of in our DNA. Compliance, safety, reliability, but it should not be the only, let's say, decisive criteria. Often also, the business case and performance improvement is something which is, very important to have a start of the project, but eventually also to show to management that through the project, it will show some tangible results. So what we do is we have the capabilities to, with compliancy, to dive into, inspection optimization, also branch out to something, in addition to that, like your reliability, to show the improvements and to extend the conversation also to the business case in that sense. So compliancy is non-negotiable, but there should also be a strong, real, tangible business case that comes with it. So we do both ways, absolutely. And with those conversations, we also have a way to monitor, is the focus really on the compliancy, or is it really, emphasizing on, let's say, the performance part? Correct. Yeah. Good. So we've passed, let's say, the initial, need, vision. The client knows it needs to change something. It has a challenge. It has an idea or a potential, let's say, a business potential. It has a bit of an idea on what it needs to do in terms of a program. There's some technology, let's say, value vehicles there as well, to have more sense in terms of what it really entails and what it needs to be done. Oftentimes, the client goes to a vendor selection or a proof of concept. At that time, there's a short list of vendors. There's a kind of a business requirement, requirement sheet.
Yeah.
To talk about that from your point of view, when you're involved in such a vendor selection, but specifically more a proof of concept, what do you see as the biggest missed opportunity?
Okay, yes. What we've seen throughout the years is that I think the biggest missed opportunity is that the proof of concept comes after they made a long requirements list with all kind of functional specifications, technical specifications. And you know them, your software should be able to do this, and so on and so on. And they have spent a lot of time thinking about it, writing it down, validating with people. And don't get me wrong, it's all important. But actually then the proof of concept is quite often, show me it can do that.
Yeah.
So tick the box, tick the box, tick the box. What we recommend, the biggest what you might call missed opportunity, is to the proof of concept before. So I would say not challenge, but invite a company like yours. What can your solution do for us? What will it bring? And then we talk again about the business benefits, not so much about the technical features. So it may even inspire them, that they see from, oh, this is the way your software deals with it. And either they can take it along in their requirement specification, we hadn't thought about it, or they can validate that already. So it gives them a better founded, what I call framework, what should be in the formal RFP, because they got kind of like inspired and insight, and gives you more freedom, if you want to call it, the opportunity to look at what is the business value.
Yeah.
And that's also what we look at in a proof of concept. Can you already think about where it will bring improved performance? Can the proof of concept already, what you call, challenge the vendor, or at least enable the vendor, supplier, to show that at an early stage? How can it help improve in short term? So it's a different question than can it do 400 different checkbox. But if you can demonstrate compliance, what more could you do? Where can you bring that kind of benefit? And very important is who are involved. Quite often the proof of concept still is in a small group who look at all this. Yes, it can do this. Yes, it can do that. Instead of having the business people involved in there and saying, okay, we're going to do this. This is what we're going to demonstrate, and have a look already at what the Cenosco solution can bring for the business. So that's another one. And the last one, we'll talk about that later, is in the proof of concept already with, I call it half an eye look at, and if the software works, what would it mean for the organization? And so if it can do all these magical things, which you show, think ready, okay, but how do we as an organization then adapt to that? Start to think ready, should we change the way we organize? Will it impact certain processes, roles, responsibilities? Not the full picture, but at least open up. The proof of concept is also kind of like, where is it going to lead us to?
Yeah.
Rather than just a checkbox. But quite often we know then there's a huge checklist which you have to comply with, or ask to comply with, because otherwise you're out of the game. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that is pretty much, let's say, aligned with how MacTrip is doing that, but then not from more a product point of view. So from an asset integrity solution, of course, requirements are there. That's something that should be fulfilled. So we approach that with a commercial off-the-shelf solution based on best practices, but also industry standards. So it is able to support the business processes of our clients with those kind of requirements. Not only that, but also it should be flexible. It should be the way to adopt it, let's say, according their needs. So that is, let's say, more from a product perspective. So we are also a product-led growth company, which means we really listen to the requirements of our clients, and only, let's say, those ones which are within those proof of concepts, but also which are, let's say, industry trends, industry best practices, standards, etc. So that is a driving, let's say, capability that leads our product roadmap, and that should not only be something for today, but that also should be something that is future-proof. So also leading towards, let's say, a long-term partnership. That should also have a future-proof, let's say, capability as well. We're going to talk about new technologies, later on during the webinar. but that should also be a key component, let's say, from a product point of view. How we also view it is from an ability to connect to the client's, let's say, IT landscape. And asset integrity environment is, yes, it is a kind of a niche discipline, but it should be also connecting to the broader IT landscape of a client. You can think about ERP, you can think about CMMS, many things. But the interoperability to be connected to their IT landscape, I think that's also a key component, which is already addressed during a proof of concept and the ways to do that. And last but not least, I think from a system vendor's perspective is the knowledge of the domain. The knowledge about the process industry, oil and gas, chemical, petrochemical, but also about integrity, reliability, etc. And the more knowledge software vendors able to provide, the easier to understand, the easier to understand, let's say, the challenges and what a client would like to overcome, and how to structure and how to frame the solution accordingly. So I think those are the key, let's say, parts when it comes to a proof of concept, which at least we, from a Cenosco point of view, we would like to address. But that's also something that I see, let's say, as let's say, a capability or something from the audience to take away. That is not only, let's say, the numerous IT requirements, but there's much more that comes with it.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the benefit we both have, engaging with so many different clients, looking in their kitchen, as we call it, and being able to share those best practices across various industries and the various challenges they have. Yeah. So yes, the proof of concept is a very valuable one, but indeed, to our opinion, should not be just about features.
Exactly.
It's really about benefits.
So moving on, let's say, to the next phase in that project life cycle, philosophy. So after the selection, after the proof of concept, one vendor is selected. It goes into the implementation and integration phase. And before starting to talk about integration, implementation. So the system is, let's say, installed, configured. It's adopted according, let's say, the client needs with all the requirements. It's trained. So in that phase, in that sense, so from your perspective, from a consultancy experience perspective, when a new system is getting implemented, what are the biggest organizational challenges you see that prevents team from embracing it in fully, or even seeing the potential? What is your point of view on that?
I like a small step on what you were just saying. The system is fully implemented, it's configured, and so on. I think actually before you get to that stage, we really look at what we call the business process mapping. So back to away from the technology, it's more about the roles, responsibilities, the organizational changes needed to make best use of it. So when you configure the software to support certain processes, who's involved, why should you be involved, what is the link to other departments? So again, what I call the wider part. So that's the real success of the implementation.
Yeah.
And there's, as you know, it sometimes where we work in a kind of like triangle, where you actually have to get the software to work. We start to look more on behalf of the client, and what does the client want to get my organization to work with the software. And we talk about that later on when we come to integration adoption. But in this phase already, it's very important that you have that view of the business processes, the wider ones. We help to map them. We help to involve end users as soon as possible, because we have, just like your specialist, the advantage of talking their language, having been there, seen it. Our consultants come from that practice, so they're more focused on integrity and maintenance management than on IT. So to build that connection, and again to look already and what are the quick wins going to be, and bear that in mind. So in the implementation phase, already think about, okay, but if this works, how can we show that success? And I want to come back to that later when we talk about integration and adoption. I don't want to steal your thunder. So,
okay.
But there must be a clear desire to work with the software. Let's put it like that. That's the key success factor that people say, I actually want to work with that software, or going to work with that software for reasons of benefit, not because I must.
Understood. So what we see in that phase is that in the implementation phase is that typically the topic of data quality is always important.
And that was the one which brought to mind with me.
Yeah.
So I talk about all these great things and things we do, and then we come across this data quality issue. We can't because we don't have the data, the quality is not good, or we first must fix all the data, and before you know it, you get drowned into what I call a big resistance. We first should fix it all. So sometimes they ask us to help them fix it all, and we're saying you cannot do everything. It's impossible to fix it all. So how do you work then as a software solution provider with those companies?
So what is important is to an asset integrity solution, of course, is driven by data. We know also that in every IT project, if you have bad data coming in, you have bad results. So data is key in that sense. We have a lot of experience when it comes to data migration, bringing additional, let's say, old legacy systems, Excel sheets into our environment. So that means that we have a full team of data specialists. They're able to do a lot of, pre-processing of the data to get it into a shape before implementing it or before migrating it. So that's one thing. So the ability to also clean up the data before migrating it into the environment. But it doesn't have to mean that everything needs to be 100% in order. There's also, from a project approach, capabilities to work with that. We tend to look at, let's say, the most critical items or equipment, if you will, first, and to bring that in, let's say, from the start. Why we do that is that with that we show not only the project team but also the management, hey, these are, let's say, the main benefits. We're able to demonstrate the value. They're able to get used to the environment, and with that we have sufficient room to get the other, let's say, other parts. It may be additional units, it may be additional plans, it may be additional sites, to get it also at a certain, let's say, level of data readiness. So that is something that we structure it within our project. So think big, act small.
Yeah.
Start with what let's say is important, and then you take it further as you go along. So yes, data is very important. You cannot compromise data, but it doesn't mean that you have to have everything ready from the start. There's a way to go about it.
Yeah. No, I like that. So we talk about the business case, and you can talk about, especially with integrity management, people first of all focus on compliance.
Yeah.
So this boiler has to be inspected every 2 years because of regulation. So it means we have to open it up, we have to shut down the whole plant. So exactly your topic, what matters most. Okay, what if we're fully in control with your solution of whether there's degradation, what the condition of the asset is, whether you can at least provide tangible, factual arguments to defer.
Yeah.
I think those are the topics that matter most.
Yeah.
And you can also see that's on the reliability side, different topic where you also have solutions, but now we talk about integrity. But I like the approach of saying what matters most for the business, because compliance is compliance, like we just said, but some are driving a lot of cost, a lot of impact because of the compliance regulations.
Yeah.
So it would be very useful to start with those first, and again, getting control and be confident about the situation, the condition of those assets, and the predictability.
So we're doing a project, for example, now in Germany, where we're, let's say, applying the same approach. So we're also starting with a small go live, which is starting, let's say, in a couple of weeks' time. So we are taking the most critical, let's say, equipment, and we take that live. At the same time, we do a kind of a digitalization project because they have a lot of, let's say, old legacy reports. Some are paper-based, PDF. Some are old, let's say, Excel sheets, and we get that to a level to also import that and migrate that into our solution. So really a stepwise process, and that works because our client project team is able to demonstrate and show to the management that it works, that they have benefit, and there's some real value behind it. Absolutely, good, So the second part of, let's say, the project is not only, let's say, the asset integrity, but the way to connect it, let's say, to the other environment, so integration, if you will. So how do you make sure that from a consultancy firm, the integration project don't just connect systems, but actually help to create a better workflow for people?
Well, I think you partly give the answer. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Better workflows, but And for us, integration, we try to stay away from the technical concept.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, it's very important. We understand it's very important. It has to happen. And like I say, if the data is not there, if it's not talking the same language, so I'm not trying to minimize the effort goes into the tech integration, but we really focus on the business integration, the integration across departments, integration across users. So it's not only connecting systems, it's connecting people.
Yeah.
So integration of, like we talked, inspection results and maintenance results. So the inspection drives certain maintenance tasks. Okay, how can we integrate that? How can we make sure that what the inspection finds, that they give a notification something needs to be repaired or overhauled, whatever? How do you build that connection? How do you build that trust? How do you make sure there's no duplication of effort? And then obviously brings up the requirements on the systems. What should the systems do? But that's where you excel. But we really focus on those workflows. What does the business need all across to get those results? So that is starting, of course, with the inspection department, but the maintenance department is just as involved. And it's also looking at things beyond compliance. It's not only the things that have to be compliant, that have to be inspected. There's a lot more inspections going on. Which one should matter? And again, what are then the workflows to make that happen? How can the maintenance people see that actually the inspection job will be done? How can we feedback the result? How does it help to improve performance? How does it give both of them the view of what else can we do more better?
Yeah.
And how is it related actually also to the financial business performance? So yes, it's workflow processes, it's involving people and really looking at, okay, how are they kind of integrated in managing this topic. Because it does not stand alone. But that's easier said than done.
Correct.
We know that, especially, and to be honest, we work with maintenance people, we work with inspection people. So there is a kind of like, not conservatism, but at least risk averse, which is logic. You want to make sure it doesn't fail in every way. Integrity, reliability. So changes, therefore, you must manage carefully and build that trust also. But at the same time, you talk about integration, and I was just kind of like, we look at the business. But for you, I can imagine it's quite a challenge. All the different systems, more and more expectation of integration. It should connect to the ERP system. It should connect to the CMS or EM system, whatever you want to call it. It should connect to maybe condition monitoring software. It should connect to OT. How do you deal with all those challenges?
Well, as you said, it can be challenging, but I think first of all, we will be analyzing together with the business and IT. The requirement of the interface itself. Is it really useful? Is it really needed? Because you can think about, I don't know, if you have a solution architect, they can think about, I don't know, numerous of connections. But together with the business, we are evaluating and analyzing the real potential and the value, let's say, the interface brings. So that's from the start. So really be thorough, but also to understand what the business value brings in terms of the integration. If it's valuable, of course, then it should be a very then we structure it as a project, meaning of course you need to have a good capability in terms of connectivity. You need to have a proper data readiness. We talked about it already. But also in terms of data alignment, that is something that is important, because as soon as you bring one system and you connect it to another system, one field may have a different meaning than the other field. So that alignment, that is very, very, very important. And we spend a lot of time together with the clients to get it 100%, let's say, accurate, because that is one of the, let's say, key aspects for integration. So data alignment, but it automatically also brings data governance, because as soon as you bring applications together, you need to know who is the owner of that let's say that system, and that piece of equipment or that specification, etc. And you need to have a very comprehensive view of that of that data, and therefore data governance is also key when it comes to integration. One step back. Before even thinking about integration, we also have the approach, okay, let's start with the asset integrity system first. Right, let's have the teams starting using the systems, familiarize how it operates, that they have full confidence that they're doing the right things, that they're operating it in the right way. Because as soon as you connect it, it's a level of complexity
Yeah.
that goes with it. So let's start with asset integrity first. Have that fully you're fully confident, and then we start with integration next. So we take that stepwise approach with that also.
Yeah. That's interesting. But I think you bring that up when you talk about business processes. You talk also about those roles, responsibilities. Who's able to input, to edit, to review, to delete, approve, and especially with these kind of processes, make sure that's properly mapped out, understood. Who should do what, and be in control.
Yeah.
And not put it on individuals, but make it part of the business process.
Exactly.
And create that, and back to what I said, also that awareness. Because otherwise you won't get to the adoption.
Yeah, correct. Which is a nice segue to the next part. So talking about adoption, and this is, let's say, the main theme of the audience, which they are quite interested to see. What are kind of the pitfalls, challenges when it comes to the adoption rate, and not only adoption rate, but I would like to connect it also to performance. So adoption and performance, meaning post implementation. Again, the user is trained, it's handed over to the client, but in that adoption and performance phase, even with great software, adoption lags, right? Hence why we're doing this webinar. From your consultancy perspective, what really makes the difference in changing mindsets and behaviors in maintenance and inspection teams? What is it that you can think about there?
This is something over the years also has changed with us. And what I mean, you really talk about mindset, heart and mind, the willingness to do so, the real embracement from what you might call the people themselves, not because the system dictates it. So what we've done is invest a lot in what we call the change management approach.
Okay.
So that is really about what is the change story, what's going to happen. Hey, maybe seen the visual on the screen. How do you make people adopt into the new process? So back to the performance topic, an example I often use is, if you want to win the game in football, first you have to have the adoption by the players of how are we going to play. If we're going to play in that way, the scoreboard will change.
Yeah.
But you first have to have the adoption in the mindset, the acceptance of this is my role, this is what I expect from you. And that's what we call the change management practice. So we now currently have actually a project at hand where you have those three elements coming together. So the client says we want to improve the performance. So there's a real business need to stay in business. We have to do better, get in control, and we understand we need software for that. The second part is the whole specification. What should the software do? And what should it bring? How should it support our processes and so on? And then you can go to, say, the implementation adoption. But the third element is the change story. How are we going to take people along? So we look at all those three angles, because we can perfectly train people how to do maintenance management, inspection management, fine. We can perfectly show what your software can do, and if you do this in here, you can get this result. But the third element is the change management. What is the reason for doing so? Why would people want to do that? How do we create that motivation? How do we celebrate successes, show successes? How can we show that the KPIs are actually improving? Without already winning the game, you have maybe more ball possession.
Yeah.
All that kind of efforts or actually benefits which your system can bring, to map that out so that you really get a situation where people understand the reason why, and also the option why they should do it. Now, some people say, the what's in it for me, but it's a combination of kind of like what's in it for the business and how can I contribute. So it's not on the selfish one, and what's in it for us. And how can we win the game together?
Yeah.
So this is the most crucial phase. So I like the word about the adoption and really about the change management story. Take people along. And why are we doing this? And what does good look like? And what do we expect from you? But what can you expect from us? What can you expect from others? Not an easy process, but the other key thing is always a continued one. It doesn't stop by, okay, now we launch the software. We know tonloads of examples where, hey, the software is on the computer, you can use it.
Yeah.
And now what? They're not using it. It's not the fault of the software. It's not the fault of the vendor, supplier. We done everything you wanted, but making sure that actually it translates to what you saw on the screen, a new way, better way of working. And last thing I will say about also enable people to give the feedback. It's not like dictating this is how it should do and this is why you should do it. Bang, but also really engage with people. If they think it can't work, why not? Why do you think? What is that? What should change? And create that trust rather than impose. At the end of the day, last but not least, involves senior management. I know it's an obvious one, everyone talks about it, making sure they are there, committed, show people they appreciate what's going on, make them part also of the change. And it's an open door, but still we see quite often that kind of lacking of attention of senior management. And that's still what most people like to see. Hey, we're doing the right things and we're really contributing to the business performance improvement. So adoption is the key. We'll talk about later what then the performance is, what good performance, but adoption is the most crucial phase. That's where the change management, also changing type of people, their behavior, expectations, and not the gray-haired old man like me, done it like 20 years like this, but the younger generation expects more help with that, hasn't got all the experience. So also how do we adopt to that? And that's why I said also from our consultancy approach, we have not saying abandoned technology part. The practical experience, the subject matter experience is very important, but there's another angle to it. That's the change management experience. And sorry to talk so lengthy about it, but it's really the key to adoption. Because the performance, like I say, the scoreboard will only keep adding up, getting new numbers as long as the adoption on the field is there, stays there, and has a flexibility to really also adopt and adapt to changing situations, changing challenges. It's the team which makes it work. So sorry to talk about it so lengthy, but it has my passion. It has our passion as an organization. How do we help clients along that aspect? But it's easier said than done, like I said before. And I think also from your end, the traditional approach, okay, here's your software. We put it on the computer. It's there and everyone can log in. Like I say, it's configured. It has the data in there, but also for you to stay relevant after that. And you can just say, well, it's here, work with it. And here's your PowerPoint. You can click on it, you can make PowerPoints. But I think with your software, there's more opportunities to stay relevant going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I know we work on some of those examples, but I think it would be useful to share also with the audience how you do that, what you do in that aspect.
So how we have done that, let's say, from an organizational point of view at Cenosco, is we have dedicated client teams. So we're talking about, after handover, so after the implementation. So we have indeed, a client team that is in constant contact with our existing clients to see how they're doing, to understand how they're utilizing the technology, if there are any additional questions, if they need additional support, and having, let's say, that active interaction with our existing client base. And that is their sole responsibility, is to keep in contact with our existing customer base and to drive adoption. That's also, let's say, the purpose, and identifying also areas where they need additional support. It may be that they need additional training, right? So especially if it's already a long existing customer, we see job rotations, we see teams changing, so we are able to give them additional support with additional training. So we have clients in the US. That's the one that you're referring to most likely. So they're long existing clients. They need to have additional training, but also additional knowledge in terms of how the technology works from a process point of view. So we're bringing not only, let's say, your organization, but also our domain experts to help them understanding how they can utilize best our technology, and therefore also seeing the real value coming out of the solution. So those client teams, those are important. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is also from a product point of view, is that I already mentioned we're a product led growth. So that means staying in contact with not only the industry, but more importantly also our existing client base. So they are very engaging with our existing clients, again, to understand how they're utilizing our technology, how the process is, if our technology is still supporting. It may be that the business strategy changed. Also, then our technology needs to support those requirements, and having that active interaction with our clients. That's a key element done with our product management team. And it's also structured. We have different kind of user group meetings. We have one coming up as well. I will share some details about that at the end of the webinar. But that's the ideal opportunity for our clients to talk to our teams internally directly. What are they confronting? How can the technology be used to that? And they are owner of the roadmap in order to also support it as as the time progresses. So not only from an organizational point of view, but also from a product point of view to ensure the user adoption right after the project, but also once they have used it, years after years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're there for we're seeing this as a long-term partnership with our clients, and we do that. Let's say from different angles.
Yeah.
After the adoption, we also have the performance because, of course, there was an initial business case when starting the project. So, in your experience, how do you help clients to really achieve the required performance improvement? What is? Can you share some experience, some examples with the audience?
Of course, I think, like we just said, adoption and performance improvement go hand in hand. You continuously work on the adoption. You work on the improvement of performance. It's a kind of not never-ending story, but there's always like a continuous improvement opportunity. So that's one of the key things we look at. I would say advantage we have working at end customers like yours, and we know some examples, is that they share more information with us. That's not that they say they don't want to share with you, but they think for you it's not so relevant about their financial performance. Their investment budgets are not something where they think they should talk to Cenosco how to deal with it. But on the other hand, they can only make the real right decisions on investments, for example, based on data coming from your system. So where we look at performance is translate output from your systems into what you might call the bigger picture. So take an example. Your software helps to manage inspections. The software helps to manage an insight in expected lifetime, in integrity, all that kind of stuff. And then comes the business case. Can we, for example, with this platform, do 5 more years? So then we say you need the output from your software and the data, the analysis, the recommendations, all that kind of stuff. But translate that to the business case. That's where we look at, what about the investment decision? What about CAPEX, OPEX? What is the impact if you continue for 5 more years? If your software can demonstrate it's doable, then we look at, the whole business case. That means that for 5 years more, you will have to inspections, maintenance on that oil rig as an example. So that's the wider perspective, where we say we can not help you, client, with this performance improvement if we haven't got the information from a system like yours. So that's why I'd say almost take it to a big high level. And then the opportunities which the software provides, like we talked earlier on, defer certain inspections. You have confidence that there's no need to open up the vessel. For example, what is the business impact? How do we translate that to money? And how do, as an organization, do we deal with that? So if we don't have to do it, we do it later. How do we organize for that? And how that translates again to what you might call performance improvement. And also the other way around. Sometimes you may say, actually, we should do more inspections to have more confidence, to really take an intelligent decision, like I said before, to continue for 5 more years. So that's the kind of business cases we work on. That's the performance improvement. Try as much as possible to translate it into monetary value, but as a minimum, at least contribute to creating that monetary value. And then you talk about, again, senior management who benefits from that output, needs that. I think that's where, again, we're complementary. Because if your software doesn't provide those insights, doesn't allow that flexibility, we're not able to come to those business decisions. And that says back to the scoreboard I was talking about. That's the real business performance. So that's our core focus. And I repeat again, and how to make sure you continue looking for improvements. It's not static. And so what is the next step you could be taking also with new technology, new inspection technology? How do we adopt for that? And what is the business case again for doing so? So that's our core focus from our perspective.
Right.
But if we work together, we can't do it if your solution doesn't provide for that flexibility. Like I said earlier, if you can't, for example, take in all kind of measurement data, do all kind of analysis, then the business case
No, exactly.
goes broke.
Exactly, and then that's that's also what we focus at. Let's say after that adoption, to focus on the performance, so to support the initial business case. And to your point, our technology will provide those the insights. So our teams are able to build any, let's say, advanced reporting, advanced dashboarding, even trending, taking, let's say, a trend over time to see if it's improving. And if not, also to have the conversation with you or with the client to determine, hey, you have a value leak. How? Why is that? Is the team not performing well? Do they need to be educated? Is the process I wouldn't say broken, but let's say ready for improvement? So to have that let's say active conversation, and that's a responsibility of our client teams that are able to support it with, let's say, additional insight. And if you don't measure, you're not able to visualize it. So that's the way how we contribute to that performance measurement and also to prove that in that phase. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe to share with the audience, we have such an example where we really looked at an asset lifetime extension study. And not just make it up, but it's like a 5-year longer with an oil rig or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we help to make that analysis. And we work with you to say, okay, what data would we need? What kind of scenarios can we run through? What kind of inspection technology could we use and what would be the outcome? So this is where your expertise, and not only the software, but also your subject matter experts come in, and where we together help to build that business case, again, based on facts, based on factual analysis.
Yep. That's good. I think those are very, very good examples on how, the project goes through the different phases, how the selection works, how it's implemented, really up until, proving the performance. But I know that also a choice for a new asset integrity environment is nothing, let's say, that is done in just a couple of years. It's something that is embedded for a longer, let's say, time. So it also should be future proof. So let's talk a little bit about the future. I know, technology developments, AI is something which is a kind of a buzzword. But in your experience, how do you see the practical opportunities for AI? So not the buzzword, but the practical opportunities for AI in asset management that really goes beyond the hype. What is your opinion about that?
I think that there's a lot of hype, and there's every day a new article about businesses being able to use it or not getting the benefits, huge investment. But if I put it very simplistic from our viewpoint, it helps to automate boring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean with that is, if we look at what you do here as well, is looking at all kind of data, all kind of analysis, where people spend a lot of time number crunching, building reports, trends. I'm convinced that AI algorithms can help to speed that up, which they actually already do. It still requires, of course, subject matter judgment. So I would not say immediately it can take it over, but it just can do it more rapidly. It should be transparent, of course, so not a hidden algorithm, but it can do it more rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Other example, we looked at trends, measurements, and you have ton loads of inspection data from the past, historical data. Okay, how can AI help us, what we call in Dutch, make chocolate out of it quicker, instead of having to go to the old man and say, what do you think? Oh, I remember, I see this trend. So that's one very obvious one, is just speed. Second one is when it comes also to looking at inspection results. If we look at judging photographs from NDTs, and we hear a lot already in the medical world, look at photographs from an echo, from a Röntgen photo, X-ray photo, that's no different than in our industry.
Yeah.
So how can you build up that collective memory, as I call it, collective history? Because I've got thousands and thousands of these X-rays, other reports, build a kind of like library out of it. That's also what client asks us to help to do that with their data. That's where the AI definitely comes in. It should help. And the third one, that's also in that same kind of logic, is bring up recommended advice what to do. So when there's an inspection due, or at least that you think an inspection should be done, okay, then let the system, let your software help. What is it typically you should do? What kind of tools would you need? What is required for the preparation? Should we involve a vendor? What tools should we bring already? Do we need a work permit? All that kind of stuff, which people all go through. Check. That's actually where the AI can help as well. And I just call it recommendations.
Right. Yeah.
And the clear example I use very often is like Google Maps. Initially, it was just drive from A to B, then turn left, turn right. And now it says, well, there's a traffic jam, or do you want the most effective route, or fuel saving, or where should we stop to charge the batteries? So it gives more and more advice, but still it requires your judgment to do so. But
Correct.
for me, those are very logic trends. I'm not talking about a complete autonomous plant where the AI does everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day, but I think those obvious ones, the boring stuff, the speed, that's definitely, I think, where people should embrace AI, and that's also where I hope that your organization does it as well, because at the end of the day, we both benefit from a more rapid, fact-based decision process.
Yeah. No,
so what do you do?
That's correct. So yeah, well, first of all, I think that what is notable is that Cenosco has already a long-term, let's say, experience with statistics, algorithms, because we're a data-driven solution, right?
Yeah.
So it has been there already for a long time. Of course, not to the level as we see, the different, let's say, AI technologies, but absolutely, we have a lot of experience there. We're one of the very first companies that also embrace certain initiatives like AI for energy. There's some others as well. And we also work with different, let's say, universities, leading toward a couple of very interesting pilots, and ones that you already kind of alluded to. So with AI and machine learning, we have the ability to do, image recognition and to do, let's say, default detection. So that is also already one part, but also anomaly detection. Those kind of, let's say, real practical examples are already possible with some of the pilots that we do. And also in terms of supporting and recommendation for the inspectors. So instead of going through a bunch of different, let's say, inspection reports, etc.
Yeah.
So we have a machine learning agent in there that's able to scan through all the different findings to the refill to comprise, let's say, a nice, concise, let's say, summary, and to highlight anything that comes out of that. It may be, a corrective error, a new repair, a new inspection date, those kind of things. That is already capable with the technology and the system that we have today. So, and there will be much more coming up, of course. That's for sure. But yeah, it's already in there. So it's ready for the clients to make use of. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's a really positive trend. And maybe one other example, which we know from an oil major with whom we are working very closely together, is that they have all kind of different crudes coming into their refinery.
Mm-hmm.
All those crudes impact degradation, corrosion mechanism. So they have people studying that. What if we put this crude in with a different, for example, H2S content? What will it do? Well, this is actually where you have models.
Yeah.
And where you can feed those models, and with AI quicker come to those expectations, and again with those recommendations. So you can prepare better already for, okay, if this is going to happen, then maybe we should change this inspection default. We'll have an impact here, we'll have an impact there. This pipe all of a sudden, for example, may have less of a remaining lifetime, and that to serve that very quickly, that's where we expect the software will help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And based on that trend, that historical data, again, to guide people. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to depend on people who have it all in their head or have somewhere in their notebook, but you want to share that with others as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back to what I said. The younger generation expects more of those recommendations. And if you look at my son, he immediately looks on his mobile for an advice, for an answer.
Yeah.
The most logical answer. It's all about probability, and that makes him able to act quicker rather than have to learn it all by heart.
Yeah.
So I think there's great opportunities for all of us in that area. And I'm not saying therefore it's magic. So you should still use your brains in there, but it helps enormously to speed up and take out what I call the boring stuff.
Correct. And I think with the technology we have already today, it's a good starting point. But of course, it will evolve as we go along. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. So yeah, Ronald, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, experience, examples, going through the different phases of the let's say the product life cycle. So before we close out, what I would like to ask is if you have still any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. We do have a next webinar coming up at the 28th of October. please sign up if you will. And I would like to end the webinar with one final, announcement. Is we do have a next reliability and integrity summit together with MacTrip in Germany. So that's just around the corner. It's the end of September. So if you have the capability, if you're interested to learn more and talk to us, in person, please sign up. We'll be there and looking forward to meet you there. And with that, thank you very much for today, for joining us, and I'll see you at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you.